starts so quietly you don't even notice it happening. Someone calls you at 2 a.m. and you answer, even though you haven't slept properly in weeks. A friend breaks down crying, and you hold them together while your own heart is fracturing in silence. Your family assumes you'll handle it because you always do, and somewhere along the way, being strong stopped being a choice and became your entire identity. This is how it begins, not with a single moment of heroism, but with 1,000 small yeses that you gave when your body was screaming no. You became the one people lean on, the emotional architect of everyone else's stability, and the world praised you for it, called you resilient, called you dependable, called you strong. But no one ever stopped to ask what it was costing you. No one noticed that behind your calm exterior, you were slowly disappearing. No one saw that the strength everyone admired was actually just exhaustion wearing a smile. This is the dark side of always being the strong one, and if you've lived it, you know it's not about physical tiredness. It's about something deeper, something that psychologists call compassion fatigue, a kind of soul weariness that comes from caring too much for too long without ever being cared for in return. Let me tell you what most people don't understand. Strength, when it becomes your only language, transforms into a prison. You become so good at holding space for others that you forget how to occupy space for yourself. You learn to swallow your own pain because someone else's always seems more urgent. You learn to minimize your struggles because you've spent so long being everyone's lighthouse that admitting you're drowning feels like betrayal. You learn that your needs are somehow less valid than the needs of those who depend on you. And here's what's devastating about this pattern. The people who love you often have no idea you're suffering because you've become so skilled at hiding it. Your mask fits so perfectly that even you sometimes forget it's there. Think about the last time someone asked how you were doing. Not the surface level "how are you" that expects "fine" as an answer, but a real inquiry into your emotional state. Can you even remember? Because when you're always the strong one, people stop checking on you. They assume your strength is infinite. They assume you don't need what you give so freely to them. But strength is not infinite. It's a resource that depletes. And when you give and give and give without ever receiving, something inside you starts to hollow out. Psychologists have studied this phenomenon extensively. They've found that people in caregiving roles, whether professional or personal, experience something called secondary traumatic stress. It's when you absorb so much of other people's pain that it becomes your own. When you hold space for everyone's grief, anxiety, and fear, your nervous system starts to carry the weight of emotions that were never yours to begin with. You might not realize it's happening. You might just notice that you feel numb more often. That moments that used to bring you joy now feel distant and muted. That you're going through the motions of your life but not really feeling any of it. This is your body's way of protecting you. When the emotional input becomes too overwhelming, your system shuts down certain receptors just to survive. It's not depression, though it can look like it. It's compassion fatigue, the biological consequence of caring too much in a world that takes without replenishing. And here's the paradox that breaks so many strong people. The qualities that make you good at supporting others are the exact qualities that prevent you from seeking support yourself. Your empathy means you can always see why someone else needs help more than you do. Your selflessness means you feel guilty for even thinking about your own needs. Your strength means you believe you should be able to handle everything alone, but that belief is killing you. Slowly, quietly, in ways you might not even recognize yet. Let's go back to the beginning to understand how you became this person. Because nobody is born believing their needs don't matter. That's something you learned, and the learning often started early. Maybe you grew up in a home where someone was always in crisis, an addicted parent, a mentally ill sibling, a family constantly on the edge of falling apart, and you, observant and sensitive, learned that the way to survive was to become stable, to be the one who didn't add to the chaos. You learned that love was earned through usefulness, that your value came from what you could provide, not from who you were. Or perhaps your home was fine, but you were just naturally empathetic. You noticed when your mother was sad even when she smiled. You could feel your father's stress even when he said nothing. And because you could feel these things, you tried to fix them. You became the child who made everyone laugh, who mediated conflicts, who carried emotional weight far too heavy for small shoulders. Either way, somewhere in your childhood, a template was formed. The template said, your feelings are secondary. Other people's needs come first. Being strong is how you earn love. And that template, formed in innocence, became the blueprint for your entire adult life. Now, you're an adult, and the pattern has only intensified. You're the friend everyone calls in crisis but rarely checks on otherwise. You're the family member who plans every gathering, remembers every birthday, holds every secret. You're the co-worker who stays late to help, who listens to everyone's problems, who never complains even when you're drowning in your own workload. And in relationships, you're the one who adapts. You're the one who gives more, who understands more, who forgives more. You've convinced yourself this is love, this constant bending and accommodating. But deep down, a part of you wonders if anyone would stay if you stopped performing strength. If anyone would love the version of you that sometimes needs to fall apart. This is where the psychology gets complex. Because being the strong one creates a particular kind of loneliness. It's the loneliness of being surrounded by people who need you, but don't truly see you. The loneliness of having countless surface connections, but no one who holds space for your depth. The loneliness of being everyone's safe place while having nowhere safe to land yourself. Researchers have found something fascinating about this dynamic. People who consistently occupy the caregiver role often develop what's called a dismissive avoidant attachment style toward their own needs. This means that even when support is offered, they instinctively push it away. They've learned so thoroughly that they must be self-sufficient that receiving care feels uncomfortable, even threatening. You might recognize this in yourself. Someone offers to help, and you immediately say you're fine. Someone asks what you need, and your mind goes blank because you've trained yourself not to have needs. Someone shows you genuine care, and you feel suspicious, waiting for the moment they'll need something in return. Because that's what you've learned. That care is transactional, that you must earn it through what you provide. That being vulnerable is a burden you can't place on others. But here's the truth they never tell you about strength. Real strength isn't about never breaking. Real strength is about knowing when to let yourself be held. Real strength is saying, I can't do this alone, and meaning it. Real strength is having the courage to be human instead of superhuman. The strong ones, the caregivers, the emotional labourers of the world, they often don't know how to receive. They've become so good at giving that they've forgotten it's supposed to flow both ways. They've convinced themselves that needing help is weakness, that showing cracks is failure, that anything less than constant capability is letting people down, and so they keep going. They keep showing up, keep holding space, keep being the rock everyone needs, until one day something breaks, not dramatically, not loudly. Just a quiet crumbling that no one else notices. Maybe it's the morning you can't get out of bed and you don't know why. Maybe it's the panic attack that comes out of nowhere after years of holding everything together. Maybe it's the moment you realise you don't remember the last time you felt joy that wasn't second-hand, borrowed from someone else's happiness. This is what compassion fatigue looks like. It's not burnout, though people often confuse the two. Burnout's about too much work and not enough rest. Compassion fatigue is about too much feeling, and not enough space to process your own emotions. It's what happens when your empathy runs on empty, but you keep trying to pour from a cup that's been dry for months. The symptoms are subtle at first. You start feeling irritated by people who need you, even though helping them used to feel meaningful. You start avoiding deep conversations because you just don't have the emotional bandwidth anymore. You start feeling resentful, then guilty about feeling resentful, then exhausted by the guilt. Your sleep becomes restless. Your mind won't quiet because it's still processing everyone else's problems alongside your own. Your body holds tension you can't seem to release. Your immune system weakens because chronic stress has been flooding your body with cortisol for so long that your baseline is now dysregulation, and still, you keep going. Because stopping feels impossible, because people depend on you, because you don't know who you are if you're not the strong one. But here's what's haunting about this pattern. The more you neglect your own needs, the less capable you become of genuinely helping others. Compassion that flows from depletion isn't really compassion, it's obligation. Connection that comes from exhaustion isn't really connection, it's performance. And people can feel the difference, even if they can't name it. Think about what happens on an airplane when oxygen masks drop. They tell you to secure your own mask first before helping others. Not because you're selfish, but because you can't save anyone if you're unconscious. The same principle applies to emotional oxygen. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. You cannot be everyone's strength if you're barely holding yourself together. Yet society doesn't teach us this. Society tells strong people to keep being strong. It rewards emotional labour without acknowledging its cost. It praises selflessness without recognizing that self-sacrifice and self-care are not opposites, they're balance points on the same spectrum. And so, the strong ones keep giving until they have nothing left, until their compassion turns to numbness, until their empathy transforms into exhaustion, until their desire to help becomes a cage they can't escape. There's a concept in psychology called vicarious trauma. It describes what happens when you witness or absorb so much suffering that it changes your worldview. Therapists experience it, healthcare workers experience it, but so do the everyday strong people, the ones who hold their families together, who mentor struggling friends, who carry emotional weight that was never theirs to carry. Vicarious trauma makes you see danger where there isn't any. It makes you hypervigilant, always scanning for the next crisis you'll need to manage. It makes you pessimistic because you've absorbed too many sad stories, held too many broken hearts, witnessed too much pain without processing your own. And the cruelest part is that people don't see this happening to you, because you've gotten so good at hiding it. You've mastered the art of the reassuring smile, the "I'm fine" that sounds convincing, the ability to hold space for others while your own interior world is collapsing. You've become a professional at appearing okay, and that performance is killing you. Let's talk about what this does to your sense of self, because when you spend years being who everyone needs you to be, you lose touch with who you actually are. Your identity becomes constructed entirely around your function. You're the helper, the supporter, the strong one. But strip away those roles and you're left wondering what's underneath. This is called role engulfment. It's when a single identity, usually caregiving, consumes all other aspects of who you are. You're no longer a person with dreams, hobbies, needs and desires. You're just the one people call when they need something. And slowly, without noticing, you disappear into that role. You stop doing things just for yourself because everything becomes about others. You stop pursuing your own interests because you're too busy managing everyone else's lives. You stop having your own opinions because you've learned to mirror what others need to hear. You become a collection of responses rather than a person with autonomous thoughts and feelings. And here's what breaks my heart about this. When you ask someone who's always been the strong one what they need, they often can't answer. Not because they're being difficult, but because they genuinely don't know. They've suppressed their needs for so long that they can't access them anymore. The internal signals that tell most people "I'm tired," or "I'm overwhelmed," or "I need help," those signals have been muted through years of override. So they just keep going, because going is all they know, because stopping would mean confronting all the feelings they've been avoiding, because rest feels like failure when your entire identity is built on being needed. But your body keeps score. Even when your mind pushes through, your body remembers every instance of self-abandonment. It remembers every time you said yes when you meant no. It remembers every emotion you swallowed for someone else's comfort, and eventually it demands payment for all those debts you thought you could ignore. That payment might come as chronic pain that doctors can't explain. It might come as autoimmune issues that appear seemingly out of nowhere. It might come as anxiety that makes your heart race for no apparent reason. Your body is trying to tell you what your mind won't admit, that you cannot keep living like this. Psychologists call this somatization, when psychological distress manifests as physical symptoms. It's your body's last-ditch effort to make you stop, to force you to pay attention, to demand the care you refuse to give yourself. But even then, even when your body is screaming, you might push through. Because being strong is what you do. It's who you are. Or at least, it's who you think you need to be. Let me tell you about the research on emotional labour, because that's what you've been doing all these years. Emotional labour is the work of managing feelings, yours and others, to maintain relationships and social harmony. It's the smile you wear when you're sad. It's the calm tone you use when you're angry. It's the patience you summon when you're exhausted. Studies show that constant emotional labour is one of the strongest predictors of burnout and mental health issues. It's exhausting because it requires constant self-monitoring and self-suppression. You're always thinking about how others might react, always calibrating your responses, always managing the emotional temperature of every interaction. And you're doing it automatically, unconsciously, because you've been doing it for so long that it's become your default mode. But emotional labour without reciprocity creates an imbalance that your nervous system can only sustain for so long. Eventually, the gap between what you're giving and what you're receiving becomes too wide, and that's when compassion fatigue sets in fully, when caring starts to feel like drowning. You know what's fascinating about people who develop compassion fatigue? They often don't recognize it in themselves. They're so attuned to others that they can spot suffering from a mile away, but they're completely blind to their own distress. They'll read about compassion fatigue and think, "That sounds terrible, I should check on my friend who's going through a lot." It doesn't occur to them that they're describing themselves. This is because acknowledging your own suffering would require acknowledging that you have limits. And limits feel like failure when you've built your entire identity on being limitless for others. Limits feel like letting people down. Limits feel like admitting you're not as strong as everyone thought. And that admission is terrifying because if you're not the strong one, then who are you? But here's the truth they never tell you. Having limits doesn't make you weak. Having limits makes you human. And perhaps the most radical thing you could do right now is accept your own humanity, with all its messiness and needs and beautiful, inevitable limitations. Think about the people you admire most, the ones who inspire you, who move you, who make you feel less alone. Are they the ones who never struggle? Are they the ones who pretend to have it all together? Or are they the ones who are honest about their humanity, who show you that it's okay to not be okay, who give you permission to be imperfect? I'm guessing it's the latter, because we don't connect with perfection, we connect with truth. And the truth is that no one can be strong all the time. No one can care for everyone without caring for themselves. No one can pour endlessly without eventually running dry, yet you keep trying. Because somewhere along the way you internalize the belief that your worth is tied to your usefulness, that love is something you have to earn through perpetual giving, that the moment you stop being strong is the moment people will leave. But what if I told you that's not true? What if the people who truly love you, who really see you, they don't just love your strength, they love you, the whole messy, tired, overwhelmed human you, and they would rather see you take care of yourself than watch you slowly disappear into the role of eternal caregiver? What if the thing you're most afraid of, being seen as weak, is actually the thing that would set you free? Because there's no freedom in pretending. There's no peace in performance. There's only exhaustion and the slow erosion of self that comes from living as someone you're not. Here's what happens when you finally let yourself be seen in your fullness, not just your strength. Some people will be uncomfortable, some will be disappointed, some will even drift away, and that will hurt. But here's what you'll gain: authenticity. You'll gain the ability to be loved for who you are, not who you pretend to be. You'll gain relationships based on mutual care rather than one-sided caregiving. You'll gain yourself back. Because the cost of always being strong is that you lose yourself in the process. You become a supporting character in everyone else's story, while forgetting that you're the protagonist of your own. You become so focused on holding others up that you forget you're allowed to fall sometimes. You become so skilled at being needed that you forget you're allowed to need. And needing, wanting, asking, these aren't signs of weakness. They're signs of being alive. They're signs of being part of the human experience. They're signs that you understand, finally, that connection isn't about one person giving while the other takes. It's about reciprocity, about both people being willing to be strong and willing to be held. Let me tell you what healing looks like for the person who's always been strong. It doesn't look like suddenly becoming selfish or abandoning everyone who needs you. It looks like learning to include yourself in your own circle of compassion. It looks like extending to yourself the same understanding you've given so freely to others. Healing looks like saying no without guilt, like recognizing that boundary setting isn't rejection, it's self-preservation, like understanding that you can care about someone without taking responsibility for their emotional well-being, like knowing that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people sit with their own discomfort instead of rushing in to fix it. Healing looks like asking for help and actually meaning it, like letting someone else be strong for you occasionally, like admitting when you're overwhelmed instead of pretending you're fine, like crying in front of someone and trusting they won't see you differently. Healing looks like rediscovering who you are beyond your usefulness, like pursuing interests that serve no one but yourself, like wasting time without feeling guilty, like resting not because you've earned it, but because you're human and humans need rest. And yes, healing looks like grieving. Grieving all the years you spent putting yourself last. Grieving the version of yourself that believed your needs didn't matter. Grieving the relationships that were built on you being strong and couldn't survive you being real. That grief is valid. It deserves space. It deserves to be felt. But through that grief, something else emerges. A version of you that's more whole. A version that knows that your worth isn't contingent on how much you can give. A version that understands that true strength includes softness, that real resilience includes rest, that genuine care begins with self-care. This doesn't happen overnight. You've spent years, maybe decades, building the identity of the strong one. Dismantling that identity is slow work. There will be moments when you slip back into old patterns, when you say yes out of habit, when you prioritize everyone else's needs above your own, and that's okay. Healing isn't linear, it's messy and imperfect and entirely human. What matters is that you keep choosing yourself, even in small ways, even when it feels selfish, even when people express disappointment that you're not the same endless well of support you used to be. Because you're not betraying anyone by taking care of yourself. You're finally honouring the person you've neglected for far too long, you. There's something profound that happens when you stop performing strength and start living authentically. You become more present, more alive, more connected, not despite your vulnerability, but because of it. Because vulnerability is where real connection happens. It's where we finally meet each other as equals, both human, both imperfect, both worthy of care. And maybe that's the secret the strong ones need to hear. That the people who truly love you don't need you to be strong. They need you to be real. They need you to trust them enough to let them see your struggles. They need you to believe that you're lovable not because of what you do, but because of who you are. So if you're reading this and recognizing yourself, if you're the one everyone leans on but no one checks on, if you're exhausted from holding everyone together while falling apart inside, please hear this. You're allowed to put yourself first. You're allowed to have needs. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to ask for help. You're allowed to fall apart. You're allowed to be human. And the people who matter, the ones who really see you, they won't love you less for it. They'll love you more. Because finally they'll get to know the real you, not the performance, not the role, not the mask, but the beautiful, complicated, tired, hopeful human you that's been hiding behind strength for far too long. Being strong isn't wrong, but being only strong is a prison. And you've been locked in that prison long enough. It's time to let yourself out. It's time to lay down the weight. It's time to stop being everyone's hero and start being your own friend, because you deserve the same compassion you've given away so freely. You deserve to be cared for the way you've cared for others. You deserve to rest without earning it. You deserve to be loved not for your strength, but for your humanity. And maybe, just maybe, the bravest thing you could do right now isn't to be strong. It's to be honest. Honest about how tired you are. Honest about what you need. Honest about the fact that you can't do this alone anymore, and you shouldn't have to. That honesty might feel like weakness at first. It might feel like failure, but it's not. It's courage. It's the kind of courage that says, I'm human, and that's enough. It's the kind of courage that breaks the cycle of endless giving and finally allows receiving. It's the kind of courage that saves lives, starting with your own. So be strong when you want to be, but also be soft, be tired, be messy, be real. Because the world doesn't need another person pretending to have it all together. The world needs your truth, your authenticity, your beautiful, imperfect humanity. And when you finally allow yourself to be seen in all your complexity, not just your strength, something miraculous happens. You discover that you were always worthy of love. Not because of what you gave, but because of who you are. Not because you were strong, but because you were you. And you, in all your tired, overwhelmed, compassionate, deeply human glory, you're more than enough. You always were. You just needed permission to believe it. So here's your permission, from someone who sees you, who knows how heavy that weight is, who understands what it costs to always be strong. You're allowed to rest now. You're allowed to fall. You're allowed to be held. You're allowed to be human. And maybe that's where the real strength lives. Not in the endless giving, but in the courage to finally receive. Not in the performance of perfection, but in the honesty of struggle. Not in being everyone's rock, but in being your own soft place to land. Because you've been strong for so long, and you've been strong enough. Now it's time to be something else. It's time to be free.